Hello, and welcome to Happy Horror Time. My name's Tim Murdoch.
And my name is Matt Emmert. Halloween may be over, but that just means it's time for some Christmas fear. And these two filmmakers have just the answer to that. Together, they co-directed, co-wrote, and co-produced the 2021 fan film, It's Me, Billy, which serves as an unofficial sequel to 1974's Black Christmas. And then, just a few weeks ago, they released It's Me, Billy Chapter 2, a sequel to their film, which brings back the character of Jess Bradford, along with original Black Christmas star Lynne Griffin. Let me just say, as huge fans of Bob Clark's 1974 classic, we were so impressed by both It's Me, Billy films, and we think Bob himself would have been too. Please welcome to the podcast, Dave McRae and Bruce Dale.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. How are you? This is great to be on. Thank you for having us.
It is great. Yes, thanks.
Thank you, guys. And well, first off, congratulations on the release of It's Me, Billy Chapter 2. And for all our listeners, if you haven't yet checked out these films, both are available for free on YouTube and Vimeo. So you have to give them a watch. This is like the perfect time, the season, getting up to the holidays. But before we discuss these films with you guys, we'd love to hear about both of your backgrounds, like where you're from, how you first got into the film industry. So starting with Dave, what's your backstory? Because I noticed on your IMDb page that you've done a ton of voiceover work, right?
I have, yeah. So that's so I've always I'm trying to give you the Cliff Notes version. I went to film school. That's what I wanted to do with my life, is be a filmmaker. I've always been into movies and movies and movies and movies. Bruce and I met when we were kids in seventh grade or grade 7, depending on where you are. Seventh grade is, I think they put the number first when you're in the US, and then we put the grade first here in Canada because we are Canadian, of course.
Do you guys have junior high in Canada? Is that considered junior high?
I don't think junior high is a thing anymore, but we met in junior high. Yes,
okay.
That's correct.
Yeah. Like the equivalent.
Yeah. And so anyway, so I've always been into movies, and I went to film school. And then after I left, I got into the entertainment business about 23 years ago, and I was doing on-camera acting and all that kind of stuff, and then I fell into the voiceover side of things, and I've been a full-time professional voice actor since 2000, and well, I've been doing voiceovers since 2004. I've been full-time since 2006. And so, and I've done everything from radio and television commercials, network promos, movie trailers, game trailers, animation, narration, you name it, I've done it. You may have heard my voice and obviously wouldn't have known it because it's, behind the microphone and not in front of the camera. But yeah, I've had a great career. But making movies is film is my first love, always has been. Don't want to give up the voiceover side of things, of course, but film is my first love. Yeah, that's sort of where and then in 2019, when I turned 40, that's when we decided to do this project and really begin the process of making a go as filmmakers on a professional level. So yeah, that's the Cliff Notes version. That's the Cliff Notes version of me.
I can hear it in your voice.
Yeah,
like
your
voice
sounds familiar.
Like, sell me some laundry detergent right now. I can know what I mean.
Detergent right now.
No.
It's Tide, Matt. Tide.
I actually was saying it rhetorically, but thank you. No, I just meant your voice has kind of this like very commanding, soothing quality to it. So I can definitely. Great. I'm hoping that Tim. Do you think our voices are?
I can guarantee mine's not soothing to anyone.
Sounds good. Sounds good, Tim.
Thank you.
Well. But just to jump on that, because another thing on your IMDb page that I was obsessed with was that you've created a number of short films related to the Halloween franchise, which is my favorite. Now, can you tell us just about some of these shorts? Like, did you continue any plot points from the theatrical films, or were they just like original ideas that you put into them?
No. So these Halloween shorts that wound up on my IMDb, I didn't put them there. Somebody did. They're not, I wouldn't call them professional films. There's one I did about 10 years ago that was somewhat like it was a step up for sure. But the ones of me just walking around my house cosplaying as Michael Myers in atmospheric lighting is just me, farting around, having fun. And certainly nothing that I would have on a reel if I was pitching to a studio. They're just me having fun. They're good. Like they're well put together because I understand lighting and camera and all that kind of stuff. And they're fine. But they're just me having fun. And that was me just sort of keeping the creative juices going, because film is my first love and Halloween is my favorite horror movie of all time, the original from 1978. So
good choice. Good choice.
Yeah, exactly. So I and those of you that know me from my YouTube channel, that's not going to be a surprise. It was just, that's what those shorts are. Just me having fun, getting out, keeping the, creative juices flowing. But it was this project that was like, okay, now it's time to get down to business.
And Bruce, how did you start getting into filmmaking, and where are you from?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Ottawa, same city as Dave. And, like you said, we met in grade school, or junior high. And, I actually had a very strong interest in becoming an animator at first. I had dreams of working for Disney or Don Bluth Films or, an equivalent, and, have always been into visual art, drawing, painting, did my own comic books as a kid, all that kind of stuff. And then when I met Dave, I caught the film bug, and we started making movies together and doing like spec commercials. We did like a horror trilogy, a secret agent movie, sci-fi, like every genre you could think of as like, kids growing up throughout high school. And then, I fell in love with that the same as I have visual art. And, being a visual artist, there's a lot that kind of transfers over to filmmaking. Mm-hmm. So I ended up pursuing a career in the film industry, predominantly in adult learning and education. So I actually work for one of Canada's largest film equipment suppliers that supplied shows like, Jumper and even Bob Clark's A Christmas Story, parts of Inception, Shape of Water, Total Recall, like you name it, right? Like all kinds of stuff. And so, I led the education and training department there, but also learned a lot about the equipment, training people on the equipment, partnering with, unions, guilds, different industry organizations, running workshops for, technicians in the industry, all of that kind of stuff, right? And then continued to make films on the side, worked on set for a couple of years, doing a variety of roles, everything from being a production assistant to boom operator, camera operator, you name it. So it's been a real mix of a little bit of everything. And then here I am now. Yeah.
That sounds like a great way to A, make a lot of contacts in the industry, and B, just learn everything about filmmaking.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's been invaluable. I have to say that my experience, working for that company, the people that I got to meet, in fact, I had a chance to meet Burt Dunk, who was the camera operator in the original 1974 Black Christmas.
Wow.
Yeah. And so he ended up working for Screen Industries Research and Training Center, which was a satellite division of one of the colleges up here. And so he, led a lot of research and did some of that work for camera and camera support systems and whatnot here in Canada. And that's sort of where his career trajectory went. But yeah, I had a chance to meet him and it was pretty cool. Did some collaborations with them and it was a good time.
Well, so what are each of your histories with the original 1974 Black Christmas? Like, when did you first see it? What did you think at the time? Let's start with Bruce this time.
Yeah, well, actually, it was Dave who I had always heard about it, right? I'd always heard of it and heard about it, seen, clips here and there, but had never really watched it, right? And it wasn't until Dave had brought up pursuing this project of It's Me, Billy, that he said, well, let me show it to you, Bruce. I gotta, let's watch it, and I'll let him describe it. But because when he had originally proposed the idea to me, that was actually the first time I sat down and watched it all the way through. Wow. And and to be honest, on purpose, I've never watched the 2006 or 2019 versions because I did not want to be influenced as we went into writing these stories. I wanted to keep the blinders on for that, like in terms from a writing point of view. So, but I'll let Dave describe the rest because he does a good job at telling it.
And Dave, what's your history with Black Christmas?
Yeah, so I've saw it years ago when I was a kid. I've always really liked it. And then in 2019, uh I had watched it again for the first time in quite a few years. It wasn't Christmas time. I think it was like May or June or something, but I hadn't seen it in years, so I decided to sit down and watch it. And this is, again, I just turned 40. My birthday's in May, so this is all in and around the time where I was looking for something, inspiration for something to make a film to really start to elevate that side of my portfolio. And so when I sat down and watched it and it came to the end, I'll be the first to tell you, it's got one of the greatest endings of all time. And depending on where you side in your Black Christmas fandom, you can feel very strongly about that ending and that it cannot go on because a certain person may have died. And so, but I saw an opportunity and I thought, I wonder, because Bob Clark, who sadly passed away in 2006, I believe, I think it was shortly before the release of the '06 movie. But anyway, so he had always toyed around with the idea that possibly doing a follow-up years later, and that he was thinking about bringing Olivia back, but this time to play the house mother. And so for those who think that Jess died at the end of the film, which there is strong circumstantial evidence to suggest that she may have.
Because the phone call comes after every death. Yeah, I've heard that too. But to me, if you don't see the person die, they're not dead.
Right?
That's it.
We thought the same thing.
So I don't care about the phone call theory. She lived.
She lived. But so there was an opportunity there. And so I thought, Bruce and I, at least for me, I didn't want to bite off more than I could chew, stepping into this level for the first time. And I wanted to do something that was manageable. The deadlines are our own deadlines. We are the studio. We are the marketing department. You know what I mean? Like just that first time at this level, working at a professional level, I wanted to make sure that we weren't biting off, or that I wasn't biting off more than I could chew. And so I thought, a sequel to Black Christmas. We're Canadian from Toronto. It's one of the great Canadian films of all time, shot in Toronto. It doesn't take place in Toronto, but it's shot here. Large Canadian cast, Margot Kidder, Lynne Griffin, and Andrea Martin, and Art Hindle, and you know what I mean? And I thought, I wonder. So Bruce came over one day and I said, listen, I got an idea. Hear me out. And I pitched it and he was like, Chris, I don't know.
I had sort of a lukewarm reception.
Yeah, it was. And I thought, and he said, well, you know what? Why don't we sit down and watch it? Sit down and watch it. And I pitched it. My idea is like, I need to see it. So we sat down and we watched it and he immediately got it. He immediately understood. He got it. He was like, I'm in. I'm totally in. And the title made sense to him at that point. Because when I said, it's me, Billy, he was like, it's me, Billy. I didn't understand why, right? Go with that. Yeah. But of course, that's the very last thing you hear in the original film is just the shot of the attic. We're pulling away as we see Lynn in the chair. And the very last word, literally uttered in that movie is, it's me, Billy. It's the last words. And so
creepy. Yeah.
When we were thinking about it makes sense, right? All these ideas and the creative decisions we made are not arbitrary. But anyway, I digress. I'll let you ask more questions. But yeah, that was sort of my experience with the film and how I brought it to.
No, I mean, you just answered one of the future questions, which is how the idea came up to do it. But I will say, since you've seen it, just out of curiosity, did you, Dave, see the 2006 Black Christmas remake or the 2019 Blumhouse film, and what were your thoughts?
Yeah, so I have seen both, and the 2006 movie, I watched it. I give credit where credit is due in the sense of that it wasn't just the same thing over again. It was a stylized version of it, modernized. But it's just like Rob Zombie's Halloween. It's just not for me. It's not, you give credit. It's not literally, it's his style, very much like the '06. It's a modern day slasher movie. I wasn't a big fan of the incest angle and the skin cookies and the jaundice and the whole, it was very, just modern day, no nuance anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I will say the one thing I will say to speak up for the 2006 movie, because I do agree with what you're saying. So we had Glenn Morgan, the director. on the podcast. And we also had Kristen Cloak, who plays what is her name in it? Oh God,
she's the older sister.
The older sister with the beautiful coat in the 2006 Black Christmas. But Glenn had worked a lot with Bob Clark and wanted it to be a little bit more like that original. And the Weinsteins jumped in and were like, blood, add more death, add more killings. And so I feel sort of bad because I agree with your assessment, but I almost feel like there were some things but again, you mentioned it, when you have a studio in there and they want certain types of things, you can't get around it. And so they had to add so many more deaths and it became almost like a Rob Zombie bloodfest. So I will say that about the 2006, but I do want to hear what you thought of the 2019 one, because I thought that was complete shit.
Yeah. Well, just to your
Matt,
point.
tell us how you really feel.
Sorry, I just don't hold it back.
No, that's okay. That's okay. To your point on the 06 movie, though, like, again, my thoughts on that are not an attack on the director. Or, it's not, you know what I mean? It's just looking at it objectively. I agree with him that's the way it should have gone. And it just, because it didn't, it wasn't sort of my style, but it's a beautifully shot film. I will say that it looks beautiful. And then the 2019 film, it felt like a response. I'll say this. It felt like, and I have no concrete 100% evidence of this, but it's a bit, how do I say this? So
heavy-handed.
Jason Blum, got into some social media trouble. I don't know, maybe 6 months, 8 months before the announcement of a Black Christmas movie from Blumhouse. And I actually don't think I think it was a non-issue, but it was, with this whole thing, he was talking about how, I'm paraphrasing this, but it was something to the effect of, he made remarks about how there's not a lot of female directors in horror or this or that, whatever the case is. And because the world is largely void of nuance, he was attacked for his comments and he had to defend those comments. And I got it. Like, I understood what he was saying, because he's not wrong. So I understood that doesn't mean there shouldn't be more. He was just making a statement about how, well, you know what, there's not really, I don't, And so I understood what he was saying, because I understand nuance. And, but he had to make an apology and he made this thing. And then I found it convenient that within a certain amount of time, 6 months, 8 months, whatever it is, there's this Black Christmas movie out of nowhere with a female director and a female writer. And so I'm not saying that it was his answer to what had happened, because I don't know. But it was interesting timing. I'll just say that. And this is not an attack on Sophia Takal or April Wolf. I'm sure they're very talented. But Black Christmas 2019 was a political message with a movie attached to it.
Yeah, and I felt the same way. I felt the same way. And it's not even that the message was a bad message. It's a great message. It's just, it felt very weird that it took the name Black Christmas and tried to attach itself to that franchise when it had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, because the movie took a major switch, and I was like, what? Okay, I guess there's blood that's black, or okay.
I like that Bruce is listening, and you haven't seen it since, so you're like,
No. Yeah. I've heard everyone's take on it and everyone's thoughts, and I'm like, I am less and less interested to watch it the more I hear people talk about it.
The problem is that, social commentary and political undertones, overtones, whatever you want to say, is nothing new to horror. Some of the great horror movies have subtext in that regard. The difference is it has to feel like it's organically part of the narrative. And there was an interview with one of the producers on the 19 film that said, no, this is what it is and this is why we're doing it. And it's just, if you beat your audience over the head with it, you're doing yourself a disservice, because there might be a good movie there. And as you said, Matt, there may be a good message there. Yeah. But if you are if you're telling your audience what to think, if you're beating them over the head with, if you're making guys like me, because it's a somewhat of a look at white men and power and all that kind of stuff. And if you're beating me over the head with it, I'm just going to be turned off by it. I just don't I'm not going to, you're making me feel like a piece of shit.
It's like shouting your opinion in someone's face versus trying to actually explain it to them and get them to understand. Right. It never works. If you've ever had a political conversation with families, shouting your opinion in their face.
Which I highly recommend doing. It's so fun.
Or especially with Thanksgiving coming up.
It's amazing.
Take it and an election. Yeah, that's great.
And it's our Thanksgiving this weekend, by the way. So, so there you go.
Happy Canadian Thanksgiving.
There you are. That's right.
What films other than Black Christmas, since it's a Toronto film, did you guys grow up and have a major impact on you?
Horror films specifically.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's a comedy.
Right. Well,
Are
yeah,
you talking about Canadian films or just films in general?
Oh, films in general.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, films in general. So it could be horror.
I mean,
as well as
specifically
other
horror,
genres.
but I mean, like, but if there's let's say you like Porky's, did that, change your life?
Right,
Which is a
right,
Canadian
right.
movie.
Yeah. Okay. So, Nightmare on Elm Street. That one was one of my favorite horror movies growing up. Just because I thought the concept was so cool. And, as I get older, I'm very much fascinated by all the quantum physics and quantum mechanics kind of stuff. And some of the ideas that are expressed in that, I will go as far as say it borrows from it in terms of these alternate dimensions and realities. And I love that kind of shit in movies. Just kind of getting cerebral like that. So, and of course, as a kid, I didn't know that. I just knew I really loved it. I thought it was cool. And this guy with these blades on his hand and it's creepy and shit. So, really loved it. And then, Back to the Future was another really big one for me in terms of sci-fi. And again, very much for the same reason. Just I love the play on time and change in time and all of that. And then the whole, especially part 2, where it picked up where the first one left off, but from a different point of view. I love that kind of stuff as a filmmaker.
With a different actress as his girlfriend.
Yeah. And there's that part. Yeah. But trying to think what else. There was a bunch. I'm just forgetting them all. Brain farts, but
no, that's great. How about you, Dave? I mean, I'm waiting for you to tell me about your experience with the original Halloween because we'll have that in
Friday
common.
the 13th.
But I know that what are the horror films specifically that had the biggest impact on you growing up?
Well, I mean, you couldn't have been a young boy growing up in the 1980s and not been a Freddy and Jason fan. And so Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, my brother Neil, my older brother Neil was the one that got me into Halloween. Because Halloween was, I say this to, for those of my viewers on my own channel who maybe are not old enough to have grown up at that time, Michael Myers was virtually non-existent in the 80s. And that's largely because he, died, quote unquote, in Halloween 2, which was 1981, and then didn't resurface till the slasher subgenre was in the trajectory of kind of on its way out in 1988. So while Freddy and Jason were tearing it up at the box office and embedding themselves in the pop culture, Michael was like nowhere to be seen. That's why when you tried to dress up as Michael Myers, people thought you were Jason. And you get, he's like, oh, you're Jason. No, I'm Michael. Who? And so Michael didn't really start to become a lot more popular, I would say, probably thanks to the resurgence of the slasher subgenre in the late 90s, and thanks to Halloween H2O. But nonetheless, I digress. For me, he got me into Halloween, loved Elm Street, Friday the 13th, The Goonies, Stand By Me, Star Wars, Indiana Jones.
Those are favorites of mine too.
Just I was obsessed with that kind of thing, and I used to rent movies and watch them on repeat all the time, like they'd be playing. And my mom always used to say, "I don't mind renting movies for you because we certainly get our money's worth. Like it'll play, and I'll just rewind it and start it again. As I'm playing with my toys or something, it'll be on. Like I'll watch it and then I'll start to play with my toys and it'll be on again in the background or something. What I mean?
But the key is, did you rewind it before returning it to the video store?
Don't remember.
To avoid a fee. remember Be Kind, Rewind? I miss those days.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I miss renting movies. Yeah.
I know. We were actually, Tim and I were just talking about it.
It's like an outing.
You all
have to agree on a film.
Yes.
Do you guys remember going to the new release section and you would take the cover off, and if the video was there, you could get it, but if not, it was checked out. These are things that people who are a little bit younger don't remember, and that's a shame.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, anyway. I love the experience of it. I have 2 sons, and I used to take them to the local Blockbuster, before because they had closed, all right, in our lifetime, of course, but it was just, they were old enough that I got to take them and share in that experience, and we'd make a movie night out of it. And it was it's one of my favorite memories about, them growing up, and we buy snacks, go back, watch them and stuff, and it was cool. I just loved it. Yeah.
So The Exorcist too is another one.
Oh yes, of course. So moving on to the first chapter of It's Me, Billy, which was released a few years ago. Now, you already kind of told us about how the idea came about, but what I was wondering is, so I know in the past there has been somewhat of a stigma around fan films, but we've seen some really great, high quality ones, yours included, over the last few years. And So, Bruce, do you feel like that stigma has changed over the years? And are there any other fan films you've seen recently that you've particularly enjoyed?
Yeah. So yes to both. I think because of the work that, like the production team behind Dylan's New Nightmare to Never Hike Alone, even some of the Star Wars fan films, Batman fan films, like there's some incredible stuff that I've seen out there that the production value is, studio equivalent. The production value is there. The performances are there. You could tell the care and attention is there. So, and when I read the comments online from people, when I read the feedback across multiple platforms, it leads me to believe, I'd like to believe that, yeah, the stigma has definitely subsided. I don't think it's gone away completely, and I'm not sure if it ever will. It's a very difficult thing to totally get rid of. I think it's very much engraved in a lot of people, but I think that I think there's been an increased respect and a scene of it. And I think for a lot of us as filmmakers creating this content, it's very much an opportunity for us to show what we can do with an existing IP, to show, hopefully, if the fans think we're competent, that's great, and if they like it and they go, that was awesome, you guys did a great job, it's a great feeling of that reinforcement that, yeah, you know what, we can do this. And obviously people enjoy what we've done. So there's opportunity there. And if you're a filmmaker really wanting to make films for a living, it's a great place to start. And why not? And, and as Dave always says on his channel, we came to the table wanting to produce something of professional quality, professional value, both sound and visuals. And even the way that we ran the production as producers, the treatment of our crew to our cast, we did the best that we could with the resources we had at the time and did our best to treat people properly, treat them with respect, make sure the needs are taken care of so that even the production process itself is enjoyable. People can have fun and we can focus on making some magic on screen. So it's, I think if people were to understand and see more of that, and those of us that are bringing that to the table, well, that's no different than any other major motion picture. And in some ways, we've received compliments from some crew members that have said this was a better managed production than some of the higher end stuff that I've worked on that, had like 3 times the size of your budget. And that's a huge compliment.
I bet. Yeah. And I feel like the passion level when you're creating a film like this has to be so much, I would say higher.
Yeah, and you can see it on screen.
Because you got, it is in a way like a passion project because these are people like you guys who are trying to make a fan film, prove yourselves, really believe in the IP and don't have a studio behind you. So you have to have like the love and passion for the material.
Where was It's Me, Billy filmed? Because the houses and the location are absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and the shots are beautiful.
Yeah, it was filmed here in Canada, roughly about an hour outside of Ottawa, and it's in a town called Almont. So the original Black Christmas was shot in Toronto. So this place is approximately 4 hours away. So same province, about 4 hours away. And we found this manor on this 20-acre property. Shout out to John, if he's listening, he's the owner of the house, tremendous guy, really great guy. And so we filmed there. Beautiful property. Just gorgeous. Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, no, I was just going to say they film a lot of Christmas, like legitimate Christmas movies there, because it's got that look and it's just beautiful and wonderfully festive, but it's,
a lot of Hallmark movies.
I was just going to say it's got to be Hallmark. That's what I was going to say. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, speaking of filming locations, Dave, I read on IMDb trivia. Now, this isn't, it's not always accurate, that a real murder took place in 2016 in the house where you filmed It's Me, Billy. Is that true?
That is true.
Really? So you knew about it, and you guys knew about this? Did you learn more about it as you were booking the place, or how did you find out?
When we did the location scout for the house, I was looking. We'd looked for houses in the Toronto area because on the first film we raised 64,000 Canadian dollars, which is about 48,000 US, and so we were not against traveling, but we thought if we could find a house that is in our, that matches our vision, and it's in the Toronto area, that would be great. But I found a house that was in the Toronto area, but we know the Ottawa area well because that's where we grew up anyway. And so I said to Bruce, as it's 4 hours away, I said, but this is a great house and we should do a location scout. So we got in touch with the owner and we did, and we went up there and we did the location scout. We got there and we're like, oh my God, that's amazing. And the owner, of course, they shoot films there all the time, but he said, no, I just want to let you know, that in 2016, and I'm glad he did let us know, but at the same time, you know, I know you have to let people know that information if you're buying the house.
Yeah.
But we weren't buying it. So maybe he just felt like, well, he's a real estate agent as well. So maybe it's just part of his professional sort of conduct. And, but anyway, he said in 2016, there was a local politician that lived in that house. I'm going to paraphrase this, but it's the Cliff Notes. And one evening or one day, his daughter, who was there, her boyfriend came over to the house, shot him, killed him, shot her. She survived, but turned the gun on himself. So it was a murder-suicide.
Oh, so two people died there.
Yeah. So the older politician guy, he died. The boyfriend died because he killed himself, and the daughter, the girlfriend, she was shot, but I believe she survived. So now I was almost positive that I told the cast this, but then when we were at the house, because a lot of our crew stayed at a hotel, we put them up in a hotel, and then some of the cast, like the main cast on chapter 1. So that would be Victoria, who played Sam, Shelby Handley, who played Emma, Malika Henny, who played Justine, myself and Bruce, our DP. We stayed at the house because there was enough room. And so I was chatting with them. I can't remember what day it was. It might have even been a few days into production. And I had just casually off the cuff, I'm like, yeah, it's kind of like, you know, the murder that happened here, you know? And I thought I had already said that. And the three girls just look at me. They just look at me like, what? And I said, well, you know, the thing, the murder.
You know, the murder that happened only a few years ago.
What? And so Victoria, if Victoria was on the show right now, she'd be like, you didn't say a thing. You didn't. And so I thought I had, but I guess I didn't. But no, it was all in good fun. It was all in good fun. But you know what? Despite that horrific thing happening a few years earlier, I didn't feel any bad vibes about the home. It's a beautiful home at nighttime when I'm lying there. Like, I didn't feel creepy or there's a ghost around the corner. There was such a warm, welcoming feeling to the house regardless. So that was always nice.
No, that's good.
That's that absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, and that could be the plot of your next movie,
Maybe.
paranormal movie about that house. But yeah, we just when we're doing these interviews, we'll look up all sorts of stuff, and it's kind of a hit or miss with IMDb trivia. Like, a lot of times anybody can just add stuff in it. It's false. But I thought that was really interesting, and I'm glad that it's actually correct. Dave, you're just going into this, but we were going to ask you about how you guys went about funding both of these films. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about the Indiegogo campaigns? Because I know they were really successful for you guys.
Yeah. So when you are obviously going to make a professional film, and that was our goal, is to deliver a professional product, not shoot on mini DV in our backyard with our friends. We wanted to deliver a professional product. So we need to raise
Which,
money.
by the way, we have filmed several times on mini DV when we were kids
in our backyard
with our friends.
I love
when we
that.
were 15 years old.
That's how we started. Yeah.
Right. And that's sort of the stigma, right? You know, again, the fan film kind of thing, you know, they hear fan film, they think, oh, this is going to be shaky camera work and bad acting and one master shot for 8 minutes. You know what I mean? But no. So one of the things we had to do, obviously, was lean on our experience and our resources and connections working in the entertainment business. And we drew up a budget. Once the script was done, we drew up a budget and we decided to use Indiegogo. And for indie filmmakers out there, your budget should never be an arbitrary number. It doesn't have to be like down to the penny, but you should have a pretty close, ballpark of what you're going to need, because you have to know how much to ask. So you have to know
Yeah.
how much is the location going to cost? How much are we paying the actors? How
Mhm.
much is this? You have to have all that in place before, when you're an indie filmmaker. If you're working for the studio, it's not a big deal. You don't
Yeah.
take care of that.
Even
But when
craft
you-
services. I mean, that can pile
Yeah,
up.
Absolutely.
yeah.
How
Well,
I
and
think
pretty
we
much
spent the
any
most
production.
on food.
Yeah, food.
Yeah, anything.
Food.
Anything.
It's a big expense. Yeah.
It is. You have to know how much everything costs, again, within that ballpark, because that's the number you take to ask people for. And you can't just arbitrarily think, I think we're going to probably need this. So that
Yeah.
should never
It's
be
got
the
to be
case.
justified. Yeah.
100%. And so so it was 60,000 Canadian. We ended up raising 64, and that was through Indiegogo. And it was through, I mean, again, it was a very humbling experience, because this was 2020. So this was right in the middle of the, you know what, and people were home.
What?
And, yeah, well, I don't know if you want me to hear, you know what, the pandemic, and people were home and people weren't working. And the fact that we were able to raise, basically 48,000 US dollars in the summer of 2020, when nobody was working and everybody was home, for a Black Christmas, film. It's not Freddy, it's not Jason, it's not Michael Myers. So, was a truly humbling experience. And just the support from everybody that came out, and we want to see you guys do this. This is amazing. This is cool. We want to see this, was remarkable. So it was through Indiegogo, and of course that's you have the perks, and you can donate as well, but you also get there's a line of perks for t-shirts and hats and hoodies and Blu-rays and all that kind of stuff. And it was a really cool experience. And again, a bit of advice for indie filmmakers out there. If you're using a crowdfunding platform, whether it's Kickstarter or Indiegogo or what have you, the true real work on crowdfunding begins once your campaign is live. You can't just put all the work into making it look great and then just put it up and leave it. You have to sell it. You have to get out there. You got to talk about it. You got to sell it. You got to go on shows. You got to, and so thankfully I do have a bit of a following on my YouTube channel. And we were able to raise it. And then the same thing happened with chapter 2. We doubled our budget, more than that now. Chapter 2, once the campaign ended, and we moved into what Indiegogo calls in demand, which simply means that campaigns that raise their money by the deadline are allowed to stay open and continue to raise more funds. Now you're in demand. But by the time we needed 120,000 Canadian for chapter 2, and we ended up raising, by the time the campaign ended, 144,000.
Wow, that's
So
great.
it was, so between the two films, it's about a $220,000 project Canadian, 165,000, 170,000 US.
And when you think about it, in Canada, the types of budgets that are allocated for feature films are around $250,000. So when you take chapter 1 and chapter 2, put them together, it truthfully qualifies as feature length.
Yeah.
And so we did produce this for the budget of what you'd normally would on an indie level, like a low budget indie level in Canada.
Yeah.
And Bruce, how did you assemble a crew?
Did you guys use contacts, or how did that work?
Yeah. It was a mixture. So it started with us hiring our DP, Greg Bennett, and shout out to him. He's a super talented guy, been in the industry like 30 plus years, working on a whole variety of different types of projects. So it kind of started with him, and he was a contact that I had from several years back. There was a couple of lifestyle TV shows that I had worked on as a PA and sound op and camera op, and he was the DP for it. So I met him at that time, and that was probably a good, 10 years ago at the time that, we approached him for this. So we started with that. And then from there, he was able to make some recommendations on some other crew members, especially camera. So our assistant cameras, first and second. And then from there, we were able to get connected through those people with other people. And it was all referral. Right. Once we got in with one, they referred to another person. There was one or two folks we ended up reaching out online through Mandy.com or another platform like that and found them. One or two didn't work out because just wasn't the right fit for the production. But mostly through referral. And that was the case on chapter 2 for any of the roles that we had to fill. So first, chapter 2 came along. Obviously, we reached out to everybody who worked on chapter 1 and said, hey, are you available? I'd say about half of them, maybe 60% were available. So they came back. The rest were working. They weren't, they just had other gigs at the time, but then they were able to refer us to other people. So very thankful for that. And it's very common. That's a very common thing that happens in the indie world. And then once you do enough projects, you kind of build a base of people that you're used to working with. And they're the folks you call on most of the time. And then someone's always able to refer you to somebody to fill a gap somewhere. Yeah.
That's great. So cool. In the first chapter of It's Me, Billy, we're introduced to Sam, the granddaughter of Jess Bradford, aka Olivia Hussey from the original film, who's spending Christmas with a couple friends at her grandmother's home shortly after she supposedly died. Now, it's made clear in your film that Peter from the original film is Sam's grandfather, which means that Jess never ended up having the abortion she spoke about getting in Black Christmas. So, Bruce, while writing this with Dave, what was your guys' POV on why Jess decided to have Peter's baby after the events of Black Christmas?
It was, how would I describe it? It would have been, so we tried to put ourselves in her shoes, thinking of her as a character and going, okay, well, the events that have taken place may be enough of a motivation for her to make the decision to keep the baby. Mm-hmm. And
like her killing Peter.
Well, yeah. But it's and I see the other side of it too, where maybe her character may have chosen differently, especially if she thought that Peter really was that threat. But I think we really looked at there was definitely a complexity that we saw with their relationship in the movie. There was a clear love, some tenderness there between the two of them, definite conflict in Jess's character about what to do, and really wanting her independence. And really feeling as though having the baby might tie her down, but then also concerned about Peter once he has his tirades and starts to become unpredictable. So I don't know. We as well at the same time, it's just pure writing is the best way I can put it, where we're saying to ourselves, well, we want to continue the story. We've made a decision. We're going to make this. So we need a jump point from somewhere. We don't have a guarantee to be able to bring Olivia Hussey back, especially in chapter 1. So we're like, well, what do we do? And so the thought was, well, what if she kept the baby? Yeah. And what would have happened from there? And that really made sense as a key jump point for the rest of the story to evolve. And I think because of some of that dichotomy, uncertainty, some people might say, well, I really think she would not have kept the baby. Other people saying, well, no, yeah, maybe I could see the psychology of it. Maybe she did. Of course, we just made the choice. Let's go for it.
No, I think it was a good choice because when you think about it, a traumatic event like what she went through in the 1974 film could definitely have, motivation for her to change whatever her mindset was at the beginning of the film. So, obviously it makes you see, I'm sure having her friends get killed makes you see life differently. So I totally bought into it. I was just wondering what your guys' thoughts were on that.
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in and say that I agree with all that, of course, and it also allowed us to make the character of Sam more complex, because if Olivia had kept the baby, then the motivation behind that was, again, yes, it was a horrible night. She's had second thoughts. Maybe it's a sign. Maybe I need to keep, whatever the case is, right? There's a lot of trauma that she had gone through. As you said, seeing her friends die, the whole thing, Peter, the whole thing. But it allowed us, what would that kind of relationship be between the daughter and Olivia? What kind of relationship would that be growing up? And then and obviously it was a fractured one. And Sam is sort of caught in the middle. Right, Sam, and you get that through the conversation that Sam has in chapter 1 with her friend Emma when they're on the porch.
On the porch, yeah.
And it just made it, from a writing perspective, as Bruce said, it just made it more interesting to us, rather than just recasting an older woman or trying to get Olivia and just jumping 50 years to where she is now. I think it not that you couldn't make it interesting, but we just were very attracted to this complex dynamic between these three characters, these three generations.
Yeah, no, I love that. And Dave, what inspired you guys to add in the character of Agnes, Billy's sister? Because I know she was mentioned in the prank calls in the original, but did you, from a writing perspective, assume that she had helped Billy with the 1974 murders?
So great question. So I'll first say this, that, and I even saw it on a comment for chapter 2 yesterday. With chapter 1, there were a few people that felt that that Agnes was a nod to the 2006 movie. And I saw a comment yesterday, where somebody said, and there was even a nod to the 2006 movie in chapter 2. And I'm thinking, I don't know what that would be, but because to Bruce's point, even though I have seen the other 2 films, whatever you might associate with the '06 movie is completely coincidental. There was nothing, we didn't take any motivation from it at all. This is purely 1974. So going back to Agnes, we wanted to introduce Agnes because it is a character that is first introduced in the first movie, even though you don't see her. And that might be where the misunderstanding comes from, especially if you're younger and maybe you've only seen the '06 movie. Your association with Agnes will be from the '06 movie. So it makes sense that you might think that just her existence in our movie is a tip of the hat to the '06 movie. But she's first introduced in that first movie in terms of her name. And I did know that Bob Clark always imagined that they potentially may be brother and sister, and maybe there was some abuse that happened there, whatever. But and again, from a writing perspective for ourselves, it was juicy information. It had a lot of meat on the bone. It was, what can we do with this? Is there something there with this character of Agnes? Because he mentions her, and because Agnes is so in the because Agnes, sorry, it's been a long few days. Because the character of Agnes is so in the Black Christmas culture, it would be strange for her not to be mentioned in our film, because it's one of those signature things. Agnes, oh, who is this Agnes? You know what I mean? And so we wanted to include her, but again, because we're making a sequel, we're pushing the narrative forward, and we thought, let's introduce her. And from a writing perspective, it's, who is she? What's her relationship with Billy? You know, we don't want to go the '06 route, you know, but so we took Agnes and went the other way. Again, it adds depth to him, because, you know, again, when you're making a sequel, you need to, how do you push, and we asked ourselves this, how do we push characters that are largely ambiguous, and you want to preserve the mystique of the anonymity and the ambiguity, but you're making a sequel, so you still have to develop them. And how do you do that and still preserve the mystique? And this was the best way that we felt that we could do it.
So then, would you have said, if someone asked you, that she helped Billy in 1974, or do you think would she have just been like someone who knew about it?
If somebody asked me, I would say yes, she was there.
Yeah. So one of the many things that Black Christmas fans will love about both chapters of It's Me, Billy, is that you have so many homages to the original film, you know, from the prank calls, the cellophane, the bodies in the attic, and even a lot of the music cues. So Dave, was including callbacks to the original movie something, and very specific ones, something you both had always really wanted to do in these films and set out to do? Like, that was one of the major objectives when making these?
For sure. Yeah. It's important that, you know, we wanted to not just put in arbitrary fan service, but things that mean something, that fans can immediately recognize. You know, characters, it would be strange not to have an eye shot. You know, that's just, you know, it's not that there is an eye shot. It's how you know, you don't want to copy it. You don't want to put them behind a door, you know, and pan across the door. And it's like, that's literally just lifted from the first movie. So, you know, and although there is an eye shot when he's over Margot Kidder, and we have a similar shot with Justine, it's still a little bit different. And so it's important, because that's the connective DNA, that's the connective tissue that reminds you're in the same universe, or one of the ways you can do that. But you can't be beaten over the head with it. You know, It has to feel like it's organically woven into the narrative, where it's, you blink, you miss it kind of thing, like Agnes's unicorn brooch on her jacket.
And in a fan film, do you need permission from Olivia Hussey to use her picture, or does anything go, or what are the rules as far as what you can do and what you can't do.
Yeah. So with fan films, we are allowed to raise money to make the movie, but we are not allowed to make money from the movie. And so everything must remain not for profit in that sense. So we can raise money, we can hire the actors, hire the crew. Bruce and I as producers are not allowed to make money. So we've literally on both projects have made zero, literally $0.
Yeah.
But
we've had to invest some of our own money to help complete the gap on certain things. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So not a dime, not a penny. No.
But that's a decision we knew going in. No, it falls under fair use. We had an entertainment lawyer and sort of, dotted all our I's and crossed all our T's and all that kind of stuff. And so, so no, we were all good in that respect. If we were pushing this for streaming and, we were going to put it out there and start making money, that's a different thing.
That makes sense. So you end the first chapter on a big cliffhanger because, spoiler alert, again, we're warning listeners, if you'd rather watch the movies before hearing about this, definitely stop this interview and go watch them on YouTube or Vimeo. But spoiler alert, at the end of chapter 1, Sam's been kidnapped by Billy and Agnes and finds out that her grandma, Jess Bradford, is actually still alive and being held captive by them. In fact, it ends after she says, "Grandma," and we don't see who she's talking to yet. So Bruce, when you both were writing It's Me, Billy, had you always meant for the story to be told in 2 parts, or did you come up with the whole story all at once? How did that happen?
Great question. Okay, so there was a lot of conversation that we had around this and a lot of ideas that we played with creatively. At first, we had talked about what if we just end the movie on the shot of Emma in the back of the car with the bag over her head. Agnes steps out and we agree, if that's where chapter 1 ended, it would be a complete picture, complete story, standalone, and it would work just fine. And then we thought, well, we can't just end it there. And, we both love that kind of thing. And, we knew when we were writing it, we had already, as we were writing the script and when we were in production for chapter 1, we had story notes for chapter 2. We had a sense of what a continuation of the story would look like and where very rough outline of where we'd go with the characters. And so, we decided, no, let's go for it. Let's write it in, because we also knew it's twofold. On one hand, we knew, well, we're not planning to stop making movies. So if anything, let's give a great ending, cliffhanger. Hopefully everyone will love it and it will create some great traction. We can make a part 2 and finish the story, and really go after it. And thankfully, it went that route. And then 2, we thought, well, it's just a great place to end. Like in terms of when you think of them as episodes and that episodic nature, some of the best TV programs, you watch that episode and then it ends at a point where you're just like, oh, I got to keep watching, and you got to hit it and you just want to binge watch it. And so we wanted to leave the audience in that position, just feeling like excited and just, I need more. And I think it's one of the greatest compliments we've received. Even on chapter 2, I've read some comments from yesterday where people had said, and some of the reviews that had said, I loved it, but I want more. And it's just, okay, awesome. They acknowledge it's a complete story. I get it, but we want more. And that's cool, as a filmmaker, because then it's a really nice feeling of validation. And that's such an important thing as an artist, as and it's cool. It's just cool to be able to create stuff that people enjoy and they like what you do. And it just continues to motivate you to do more, right?
Yeah.
It's cool.
No, totally. So moving on to It's Me, Billy, chapter 2. Now, in case listeners don't know, Olivia Hussey was originally attached to reprise the role of Jess Bradford that she made famous 50 years ago in Black Christmas. Now, Dave, I know it's a long story and you've probably had to tell it before, but can you tell our listeners how everything went down with Olivia? Like, what was your initial pitch to her, how you got her to sign on, and then what ended up happening?
Yeah. So I'm pretty warmed up with this story. So I can probably
You're like, I got the beats ready.
I got the beats ready. I can probably condense it. Famous last words. No. So one of the reasons, and everything that Bruce said is absolutely 100% bang on. And one of the conversations we had as well when we were talking about the ending and, the cliffhanger and all that was, what if we could get her? We did actually, not a lot of people know this, but we did make a somewhat light sort of surface level attempt to inquire about having her in chapter 1. Because we thought, what if at the end when she says grandma and then coming out of the darkness, it's Olivia Hussey and cut the black
right?
credits.
Can you imagine that? Yeah.
Oh my God.
Take my money now memes.
I know. I think you would have raised, what did you raise? 250,000 Canadian dollars.
Maybe. So, but obviously it was a bit tricky at that time and COVID and everything, the whole thing. So but it was always sort of a long shot. It was a goal. It was always in the back of our heads. We knew going into chapter 2 that we were going to make a play. And we wanted to have an answer before we launched our Indiegogo campaign. We wanted to know if it's a yes or a no, because if it's a yes, we're going to launch with her attached, because that's only going to drive people to it, raise money. And then if not, then we don't have to worry about it. So it was March of 2023. We had reached out to Lynne Griffin. Lynne obviously had seen chapter 1. She helped us with chapter 1 with her Christmas ornaments. Shout out to Lynne, absolute sweetheart.
Mm-hmm.
And we love Lynne. We've had her on the show, and I was going to tell you guys when we had her, it was like a year and a half. I think she hadn't filmed yet, but she was so excited about making this film. She was telling us about it. So yeah. She's amazing. She's sweet.
She's awesome. And Lynne and I actually have the same voiceover agent. So there's a connection there and sort of an in and so reaching out to Lynne and talking to Lynne's not a big deal. So we knew we wanted to have, is it possible we get Lynne in here? But we knew that she had her character had passed, right? And so we had to write her and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, we can talk about that in a moment. But so we had her on board first, and then we made a play for Olivia. In April of 2023, we reached out to her manager, her rep, Tony Marinozzi, and he got back to us quite quickly and was on board. We had a phone call with him, sort of a conference call, explained the project, explained what it's about, what we're doing, why we're doing it. He sounded very interested. This is interesting. It's not not that she wouldn't be paid to be in the movie, but in the sense of like, it's a not-for-profit film. So there's no like back end residuals, all that kind of stuff. And he understood all that. And we sent him the script and the poster and some stills and all that. And he took it back to Olivia, and Olivia was interested. And we were able to have Olivia sign what's called an LOI, a letter of intent. And that just gives us permission to use her face or her, to use her
image, her likeness.
Her likeness, her faces for the purposes of raising money. Mm-hmm. And she basically, says that if you can raise this and abide by this, I will be in your movie. And so, the night before we launched the campaign, the manager sent over the LOI with my signature, Bruce's signature, and Olivia's. And, so we had it and we were ready to go. And then we launched on May 1st, 2023 with her attached to it. And, the internet broke. And so, unfortunately, what ended up happening, and we were in constant contact throughout the summer. Obviously, the SAG strike happened, the writers and actors, which caused a lot of problems in terms of trying to get things set and in order. Once the actors strike took place, we had to then apply for an interim agreement.
Because actors can't do or films that are not for profit during the strike. I guess I don't.
Well, what it is that yes, they can. We are not part of the AMPTP, I think is what it is. And so we are a project that she would absolutely be allowed to do, but because of that, we have to still apply for the interim agreement that says we are one of those projects that she's allowed to do. Yeah. And so we applied for it through SAG, but because everybody was applying for one, all the indie stuff, it took about 2.5, nearly 3 months to get approved for it. Yeah. And so she can't sign the contract until we have the agreement in place. And
it has to be sanctioned by the union. for us to proceed.
That's it. And so we didn't get it until I think it was 3 weeks before we were going to go to camera.
Yeah.
We finally got approved. And so then what ended up happening is that Olivia, who has had some health issues over the years, she's 72 now. She was having these chronic health issues at this time, and her manager called me on the phone and said, unfortunately, she's under doctor's orders. Her physician has recommended that she not travel. And now
and not work. Like it was, because the health issues affected her ability to perform.
That's right.
Oh,
that's
God.
right.
When Olivia had to drop out, did you have to change the script?
No, so we didn't have to change it at all. We just had to. So to sort of finish my thought on that, we had gone back and forth on whether or not, he had inquired, well, maybe, is it possible that you could move the shoot to January or something like that? We were shooting in November. And I said, Tony, look, if you can give me a guarantee, we will seriously consider it.
Yeah.
But people have to understand, though, is that although we are a fan film, quote unquote, we're still a professional production. And with a professional crew and professional actors. And when you're 2 weeks away from going to camera, everything is locked in. Everything is
you can't reschedule with that many people.
No,
and if you
a ton of momentum.
A ton of momentum and a ton of money. And if we move the shoot to January, we're not Paramount here, right? If we move the shoot to January, it would have cost us thousands of dollars to do it.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is people don't realize the amount of, the amount of cost it is to push it. Like some people think, oh, we'll just push the shoot. They don't realize that there are costs that you incur to push the shoot.
Yeah.
And there, you lose money, and then you've got to still front that money again to pay for the hotels, to book the location,
Lights.
all of those types of things. Yeah. The rentals, you lose that money.
And also, what if you pushed it and she was still having health issues?
That
Exactly.
was the thing. And there's no guarantees that our other actors will be available at that time, or our crew will be available at the time. And then if they're not, now we have to recast and now we got to look for a new DP, or we got to look for a new, caterer, or a new, first AC. So it just adds a whole ton of headaches. And he couldn't give us a guarantee. And, like I say to people, it's not that she just was under the weather and she had a cold. It was a chronic thing that she deals with from time to time. And so unfortunately, we had to make an executive decision and say that we had to move ahead at the time that we were locked in. Olivia understood. No harm, no foul, no hard feelings or anything like that. Tony understood. Everybody understood. We're still on all, good terms. I spoke to Olivia's husband, David, through email, and he, wished us the best of luck. He understood, all that kind of stuff. So it's all good. There was no animosity, but these things happen, and it was unfortunate, but luckily we were prepared to pivot and recast.
I mean, God, that must have been tough. I know that, and no disrespect to Lisa Kovac, who did a great job taking over the role of Jess, who played as she really deserves praise for her performance. She also great casting, because she really looks and sounds like her.
You see why we chose her.
Yeah, of course. But I just can't even imagine being in your shoes when that happened, and you're getting
high pressure situation.
And you had just launched the campaign and everything, and wow, and but I will say this: you were able to get, as you said, one of the original stars from Black Christmas in Chapter 2 in Lynne Griffin. And, let me just tell you, she obviously doesn't play Claire Harrison in your film, because Claire was killed in 1974, but she does return as Claire's sister, Nancy. So when you guys, you were telling us, so when Lynne, you had first written into the film, or how did you get her involved? Or I guess you already knew her because of your agent, Dave, or how did that whole thing get started?
Well, I'll let Bruce tell the story, but I'll just say that I reached out to her for Chapter 1. I didn't know her at that time.
Oh, okay.
And it was because we thought, because Lynne's very active online and she's very accessible. And so, and not a lot of people are, right? And so I reached out to her for Chapter 1 and told her what we were doing, and she thought it was a hoot and thought it was fantastic. And then she wanted to somehow get involved. And she says, well, she wanted to help the campaign. So she said, I make these ornaments. Maybe we could, and I was like, that's a great idea. And through that, and then I had her on my channel for an interview, and through that conversation back and forth, that's when I discovered that we had the same agent, same voiceover agent, and which was kind of fun. So yeah, it was a no-brainer to reach out to her for chapter 2. But I'll let Bruce take over.
Yeah, it was. I would say from a writing point of view, we just sort of said to ourselves, "What if? What if we could get her in the movie?" And we had also toyed with, some other alum to see if we could get them in. And, where we landed was, we asked ourselves, well, how do we get Lynne in the movie when her character died in the original? Like, how are we going to do this? Right.
Yeah.
And coming back to what we talked about earlier about Jess's decision to keep the baby and us using that as a jump point in the writing, we took the approach of what is not exposed or what is not explored in the original 1974 film. It ends at a particular moment in time. These characters' lives will continue after this point. There's nowhere that it says that Claire didn't have a sister. And once we figured that piece out, we went, there it is. And having that character get introduced as a detective, we were able to slot a bunch of puzzle pieces together and make a bunch of things just instantly work. And then at the same time, it was cool, kind of meta, to have Lynne in there, playing the sister of the character that she played, in the 1974 film. And it was just super cool. And when she heard our thoughts and ideas around it, she really liked it, really took a liking to it. And as you've seen in the movie, she did an outstanding performance. And you're just playing off of Glenn, Michael Grant, who plays opposite her in the detective scene there in the police station. They just did a fantastic job together.
I've got to say, like, it was a great, she did great, but like, you guys gave her a chance to really show off her acting chops in the film, like much more than even the original Black Christmas, I would say. But I also love that you gave her character like a little extra backstory on what would have added on to the end of the 1974 film, because, when she tells the story about arriving at the sorority house while Jess was asleep and found Billy standing over her, but he shoved her and got away. So what inspired you guys to add that little bit of extra story onto the end? Because you easily could have just introduced her as a sister and like had her take part. So what inspired you to add that little extra bit onto the ending of Black Christmas?
Well, Dave and I, it's always important to us when we're writing that everything makes sense and that we can connect the dots. And especially since dealing with a piece of work that someone else has created, we also want to do justice for the fans, us ourselves being a fan and then other people that are watching it. So we ask ourselves, how can we connect these dots? There's certain gaps that we wouldn't find acceptable to leave ambiguous. We feel as though the stuff that is left ambiguous, it's not an arbitrary choice, it's purposeful. And we feel as though it doesn't require justification, like Billy's whole background and Agnes and whatever. We don't need to get into that. That's part of the mystery of it, to use that as an example. So for Lynne and, adding in those details, we thought, okay, well, what happened after the phone rang? The film ends with the police officer on the front porch of the house smoking a cigarette. And we thought, well, what if Lynne's character, she's a young cop. She walked up onto the porch, says hi to whoever she's been sent to go check in, right, on Jess. And then boom, there he is there. Because as an audience, we know that Billy was still in the house. Mm-hmm. The phone was ringing when the movie was coming to a close. So it made sense to us that she would come in and discover, and we needed that critical piece for her character to connect the dots so many years later. And there's that line where she says, pretty Agnes, just like having a wart removed. Like that was a key thing, right, in the scene. And that's the moment when it clicked for her. And then it's the moment that she gets to click for Detective Henny. And so we needed something from that night to serve as the trigger for her character to go, the aha moment, and bring it all home, 50 years later to actually solve it, and like so many long time cold case pieces, it's like, there's that one detail, that one clue that you need just to thread it all together. And for us, that was the piece.
Yeah.
And Dave, did Lynn talk about what it was like to return to the character 50 years later?
Or to the franchise. Yeah.
The franchise. Yeah. Yeah. It was surreal for her. I think she felt very thankful and, and because it's a low budget, not no budget, but, in the world of filmmaking, $150,000 is still low. But it had that. And because we're shooting in one location, mostly, there was a very intimate sort of, camp kind of vibe. We're all having fun making a movie. And she loved that. She loved that about our shoot. And I think she was having a hoot. I think she was having a great time. And I think she really appreciated she appreciated the collaborative nature of myself and Bruce as well. She's a thinking person's actor and she takes it seriously. And I think maybe she felt a bit of, like, oh, this is, this is Black Christmas. This is my jam. You know what I mean? And so I think she was just happy to be there and be a part of it. And she, like we said, she did amazing. And I think our script did challenge her, in terms for an actor, because it was very, there's a lot of dialogue, but she killed it. I mean, she just absolutely killed it. And she was great. So I think she did, I think it was cool for her to be able to come back. And again, although it's not the same character, it's a blood relative, and she's still kind of getting into that, zone. So it was really cool to be able to work.
She
with
was
her.
great.
And did you both ever consider trying to get Art Hindle, who played Claire's boyfriend Chris, who actually survived Black Christmas, to reprise his role? Was that ever a consideration?
We did. So, FYI, the role that Lynn was we always wanted Lynn in the movie. And we were always going to get her in there somehow. But the role that she plays in the film was at first offered to Art Hindle.
Oh.
And it was going to be Art Hindle who was going to play Claire's boyfriend, who is, 50 years. He wants to know who killed his
Girlfriend from college. Yeah.
That's right. And so I always imagined him playing it like a George C. Scott kind of role. You know what I mean? He's this disgruntled sort of, coming in, has that gravitas and whatnot. And then Lynn was going to play the sister. She was going to be another character, not like married to Art or anything like that, but just somebody like another, like they were going to be there together. Like you know what I mean? Like it was kind of a thing to get them both in the movie. But Art read the script. He loved it. He thought Bob Clark would have really liked it. But Art decided to pass on the project. So when that happened, we thought, well, why don't we just offer this role to Lynn and see if she'd be interested in taking on the whole role. And so we did, and she was, and she was fantastic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, we always wanted to get them both in there because they're always a hoot with each other.
Yeah.
And we thought it would have been great to have them both in there. So Lynn was always going to be in it, or at least asked to be in it.
Exactly.
And we would have had a smaller role for her had Art Hindle said yes. But he passed, and so we just offered it to Lynn.
No.
Does Art Hindle still have that jacket?
He does. He does still have that jacket.
That
Yes.
beautiful fur,
Yes,
like
the
from
big,
the
big
original.
fur jacket from the.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he does. He was on a podcast about a year or so ago, and he was like, "Hang on one second." Like,
And he put
"Here
it
I
on?
am." He put it on. Yeah, put it on.
That's
and
amazing.
collars up like this. So he still got it. I'm assuming it's
I
the
love
same
it.
one.
So I'm going to give another spoiler alert for listeners, especially if you don't want the ending of chapter 2 ruined, because I'm about to ask about it. Last warning. You've been warned, listeners. So, Agnes. Okay. At the end of chapter 2, Agnes has been killed and Billy is trying to strangle Sam, but her grandma Jess saves her by literally taking Billy's eye out with a poker. So, Dave, was this done purposely? Because in the original, Billy's eye is all we kind of really see of him. Did you want like a big climactic scene that focused on that eye?
Yes. So again, going back to the writing, Bruce and I, and we're going to do a show soon on my channel, like we did with chapter 1, where we kind of talk about all the symbolism and the cinematic language in the film. So so for us, Billy, it's all about that eye. And once that eye is removed from his skull, his body falls to the ground. you'll notice that we never focus on him anymore. I mean, you kind of see him in the wide shot kind of off, on the ground, but we don't have this sweeping shot of the dead body or this close-up shot of his face or the hair over his face or the eye socket or nothing like that, because his body doesn't matter anymore. The eye is sort of the heart, right? It's not just an eye, it's his heart, and so that's why you don't really focus on him once the eye is out. And it was important to us to have Jess be the one that finishes it, because she didn't finish it in the first movie. And it was important for us that she does it with a fire poker, because she had the fire poker in the first movie. And again, she didn't finish the job. She tried to, I think he came around the door and she put the door and she ran downstairs and all that kind of stuff. So it's almost like there's a finishing what she started, feel to the piece. So yeah, so it was always going to be part of it. We wanted the eye to be part of it, because the eye is one of the symbols of Black Christmas. And once that eye comes out, the body's it's just a shell. It doesn't matter anymore. It's about that eye. And that's why we focus on the eye in the very last shot of the movie. You see the eye on the fire. I mean, there's so much, it's steeped in symbol. If you're a Black Christmas fan, you should immediately get the symbolism, what I mean?
Yeah.
And how deep it is. If you're just a horror fan, then it just looks like horror movie stuff. But if you're a Black Christmas fan, ending on the eyeball attached to the fire poker is the way that we wanted to do it, because there's so much meaning behind that. It's fine. That shot says it's finally been done.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, we're both big Black Christmas fans. So it's kind of like we're asking you questions we sort of know the answer to. But
Sure.
Right. You're looking for confirmation.
I mean, half of the questions I'm like, well, I know what the answer is, but I want to ask you. But one thing I don't know the answer, in your guys' opinion, I'll ask this to Bruce, is this really the end of Billy? Because as Dave mentioned, we see his eye, and I know you just explained that's his heart, and so his body is really nothing without it. But we don't actually see a full shot of his dead body. So is this really the end of Billy?
So short answer, yes, it is, because we have no intention of making a part 3.
Okay.
We want to move on to, original content. But, if this was like any of the other major horror characters, like Freddy or Jason, I would say, well, no, of course not. You didn't see him, so of course he's still alive. And and in the next movie, he'll come back with an eye patch and, whatever, and he'll be walking around and his head will be one way. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It'll be cybernetic by the time we get to part 10, because we'll be in the future in the year 3065. He did some time travel. Yeah, but the real answer is, no, he's dead. He's done. Yeah.
No, that makes sense.
We're done.
So we just have a few final questions for you guys before we wrap up. So Dave, we happened to catch you as Freddy Krueger in Dylan's New Nightmare, last year's unofficial sequel to Wes Craven's New Nightmare that brought back Miko Hughes. And I've got to say, you were awesome. Like, it was a really great portrayal of Freddy, and that is not easy to do. We'd love to know, how did you get involved in this film? And because it also left off on a cliffhanger, do you know, I know you didn't make this film, but do you know if there are any plans for a sequel that might bring back Heather Langenkamp?
Yes. So thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that. I got involved. We had made the announcement for It's Me, Billy, the first one in 2019. We had I made an announcement on social media that I was entering into development on that project. And then in the fall of 2019, Cecil Laird of The Horror Show reached out to me, because at that time it was the 25th anniversary of the original Elm Street. It's now the 40th anniversary. The 25th? No, the 20th anniversary. No, the 30th anniversary. Excuse me.
Oh,
no.
35th.
The 35th anniversary of the original Elm Street in 2019. Right.
This year's the 40th. Yeah.
This year's the 40th. That's right. Right.
But it's the 30th of Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Oh yeah, the 30th. It's the 30th this year of Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Yes.
And it was the 25th of Wes Craven's New Nightmare. That's what I'm getting mixed up.
And if A equals B and B equals C,
I hate
this is like an Abbott and Costello routine. This is great.
Who's on first? What's on second?
Yeah.
Anyway, so it was some anniversary of something, but no. So Cecil Laird reached out to me, and I had known Cecil, not known him, but I known of him. Watched his channel, he watched mine, and he, make a long story short, he did sort of a little backdoor audition with me. I didn't know he was doing it. He asked me to do some voices, and I did, and then he knew I was a voice actor. He knew I had experience in that, and he reached out and he offered me the role of Freddy Krueger in Dylan's New Nightmare. Now he had already, his buddy, he had a friend that originally was going to play him. But his friend didn't really seem, as
Freddy-ish?
passionate. Yeah. And as passionate about
Your
about the
voice,
project.
by the way, sounds just like Freddy, especially from it's Freddy's Revenge.
Oh.
When you were talking, I was like, oh gosh, this is really reminding me of Freddy's Revenge.
Yeah,
part two?
Yeah. That's what I mean, I don't know.
That's
if
one of my
one-
favorites of the
Yeah,
whole.
I was like, oh gosh, this is ringing very much to me.
Well,
So he
it's-
got
it's-
you in through an audition without telling you were auditioning.
Basically, yes. Yeah. And so, but he reached out to me, he offered me the role, and I said yes. And the reason why I said yes was because of everybody that's involved. I mean, Cecil's is a talented writer. And of course you had Vincent DeSanti of Womp Stomp Films with the Never Hike Alone franchise. He was going to come on as a producer and help to spearhead the Indiegogo campaign, which is great. You had Miko Hughes involved. And so there was an opportunity there. It would have been silly for me to turn it down. And then they were hiring Nora Hewitt, season 9 Face Off winner, special effects makeup artist who's worked on, Ghostbusters, Mandalorian, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so it made sense to be a part of this. I was like, I would be stupid to turn this down. And so, so I said yes. And now, of course, they were originally going to shoot Dylan's New Nightmare first before we shot Billy. But I'm in Canada, of course, and they're all in the US. And so the borders were closed. And so, that is why, and I'm just so thankful that, like, there were many times where I thought, well, they're just going to recast. Like, I mean, this is taking forever. You know what I mean? And I don't know if there was any conversations of that behind the scenes. They never told me, but Cecil has said, no, I wanted you. And in my mind, it was you. Now, maybe he had other people going, Cecil, come on, let's just recast. You know what I mean? I don't know. I have no idea. Because they could have hired somebody who lived down there and then they just would have went and shot the movie. But Cecil wanted to wait. He wanted to wait. And he did. So I was cast in 2019, but I didn't shoot it till 2022. And
Wow.
So, they
And so
waited.
do you know anything about if there is any plans for a sequel, if they want to bring back Heather Langenkamp? Because again, they have a very similar to It's Me, Billy, where it's like an ending, he gets a call from his mom. And I know it's not Heather who does the voice, but definitely more story there. Do you know if there's any plans?
So Cecil has written a script. They do want to do it. I think Cecil wants to make a feature. He wants to just wrap it all up rather than spending the next 10 years of his life doing installments, because like him and like Vince, they also want to make original work as well, right? To be able to take to market and seek distribution, all that kind of stuff. So if he was to break up the Dylan's New Nightmare story in further installments, he could be doing this for the next 10 years and he doesn't want to do that. So he wants to just kind of wrap it all up in maybe a feature. And so he's written the script. I know that. I have a version of it. I don't know if it's the latest version. And I think there are certain plans around certain Elm Street alum that I know that would be, that they are probably going to pursue. Whether that comes to fruition or not, I don't know.
That is a very good political answer. I appreciate it.
But there are certain things, and of course, I would absolutely love to be a part of it again. And because I had a blast, I had an absolute blast on the first one.
No, it was great. It was great. And then Bruce, I know you guys just finished this film, but are you working on any new projects at the moment, or any plans for new projects in the near future?
Yeah. There's a few different ideas. One in particular that I've started the writing process for, and I'm in the process of brainstorming and researching how do I acquire funding for it, right? And there's multiple options aside from the crowdfunding side. So so there's one that I'm looking at. I think it's very timely. I can't really share too much But yes. And then there's a joint project that Dave and I have that we've, pardon me, put together. We've got a treatment for it, and it's ready to look it over again, give it another pass over, try to, develop it further, turn it into a script. But it's certainly, it wouldn't take much to get it pitch ready. I'll put it that way. Yeah. There's always little short film ideas that are in my mind, looking forward to trying to shoot and what have you when I get a moment. But right now, all of the focus really is on finishing Billy, because although we've got the film finished and the film is out, our next step is to fulfill the perks. So the next sort of creative thing is putting together the behind the scenes featurette that's going to go on the Blu-rays. So, our Indiegogo campaign is still active and in demand, as David mentioned earlier. And so we're going to be adding a BTS featurette onto the Blu-rays for folks that decide to get that. So that's sort of the next immediate thing. And then starting to write and kind of look at other things. And, and David and I have some shared ideas that we may want to pursue together if we get the opportunity soon. So it's, it's all kind of, let's see where everything lands, right? Stay focused on the priority in front of you. And then, so there's certainly no shortage of ideas. I'll say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Dave, same question.
Yeah, other than the shared projects with Bruce, any other ones on the horizon?
Well, the shared one I'm very excited about because it's such it's just a cool, we can say, it's a horror film. And
I was just going to say, is it horror?
Oh, yeah.
Give us something.
It's a horror movie, and it's steeped in mood and atmosphere, and it's not a slasher film, but it's topical. I'll say it's current in terms of it would be, I think, an attractive commercially, but it's
definitely a thriller.
It's a psychological horror. It's eerie, moody, atmospheric, and all that kind of stuff. So that we're very excited about that. But I have I've talked about actually on my YouTube channel. There's a project that I've been working on since I've been working on it here or there. I do have a script, but it needs a once over to kind of get it into tip top shape. But it's horror again, but it's based on a true story from my second year of college, 20 years ago now. And I, is it 20, 25 years? Is it 20? Anyway, a long time ago now. And, it deals with the paranormal. And I'm very passionate about it. It's one of my babies. I'd love to make it, but it's not like a typical sort of, if this was back in the 2000s and the Weinsteins got a hold of it, it might be a typical sort of run of the
more blood, death,
more
Halloween
blood,
resurrection.
Death. But that's not what I want. It's more, it is scary and it's frightening and it's dark and it's moody and it's atmospheric, but there's more meat on the bone. It's a little more philosophical, and it asks the question of, where does the seat of consciousness lie, and things like that. Like it's not too heavy. I mean, you still have to entertain your audience. I'm not saying I'm going to, deliver Inception here, but I just mean that it's a little more cerebral than, say, like a run of the mill kind of paranormal movie that they seem to dish out, a dime a dozen every day. Because these are questions that I think about, and that I thought about back then as well, and was one of the inspirations to write it and to get into it. But of course you have to entertain your audience too, and it's going to be spooky and scary and all that kind of stuff as well. But I'm really excited about it, and it is one of the movies that I want to do.
That sounds great. So you mean it's not a story about an independent film crew going to a house to shoot a holiday slasher and then finding out a murder took place at the house?
Where the father and boyfriend have passed away.
It's not about that.
It's on the list. It's on the list. No, it's not about that. No.
Well, that sounds great. That sounds amazing. Obviously, I love moody, slow burn kind of horror films that are very atmospheric, and obviously you guys have the talent to create that type of things we've seen in the It's Me Billy films. We have one final question for both of you. We ask this to everyone we interview. It puts you on the spot a little bit, and you may have already told us some that would fall under this category, but we're still going to ask it. What is one thing that you both can tell us about your experience working on either It's Me Billy or It's Me Billy Chapter 2 that you've never told any other interviewer, publication, podcaster, anything. It can be a tiny little detail. It can be the juiciest piece of gossip, just one thing.
Or
yeah.
if you can't think of anything, you can just laugh like Freddy Krueger.
I think you want me to do that anyway.
I
Well, first though, I want to see if there's anything. We ask this to everyone, and again, it doesn't have to be the biggest thing, but just one thing about your experience working on either of these films that you've never told in an interview or on any podcast before. And whoever can think of that first can go first.
That's such a good question.
Yeah, because we don't want to hear those stories you've told other podcasters. We want happy horror time exclusives. No, and again, it doesn't have to be the biggest thing, but just think about your experience working on it. Maybe Lynn's first day, maybe something that
I'll say this. I don't know if I've mentioned this before. This is the first thing that came to my head. Maybe I have mentioned this before. I'm not sure. If I have, it's not a lot.
We're listening to every single podcast you've ever done after this to make sure.
So there was, I remember on chapter 1, I was sleeping on the couch in the living room, the couch that you see, and you don't really see the couch in chapter 2 because you don't spend a lot of time in the living room. But in chapter 1, the couch that the girls are on, I was sleeping on that couch. I was so exhausted. I was sleeping on that couch. I think it was like maybe 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm lying there, and I know that our day is about to start. And oh no, I guess maybe not about to start, but there was a few hours still to go. But it was quiet in the house, very quiet. I'm lying there, and then all of a sudden, I look up, and of course I can't see over the couch, right? But I look up and I see Shelby, who played Emma. She's there, and she just walks in, and she goes over and she looks down at me like this. She has like these bug eyes, and she looks down at me like this. And I'm like, Jesus. And she freaks out, and she's scared, and I'm scared. And we're like, what's going on? She didn't realize that anybody was up. She got up to make a phone call or something like that. She had to make a phone call on her phone. She can't, but she's so, I mean, she's what? She's 5'2", and you know, she's not very, you know what I mean? So I didn't even hear her. Didn't even hear her at all. And we both had a good laugh about it, but it was just scared the bejesus out of me.
Was she sleepwalking?
I thought you were going to say she appeared with the plastic bag over her face. Now that would have scared me.
That would have been terrifying. I just wasn't expecting to see anybody. And that was funny. Another thing, okay, I'll say, but I think I've mentioned this. I don't know. The house is a mansion, as you guys know, and it has those buzzers in the rooms for room service. And I didn't know what it was. They're lit up in every room. And this is the first night we were at the house on chapter 1, and I had pressed it. I pressed it, and it buzzed downstairs. You know, you could hear it. You could hear it. It's buzzing the kitchen. And so a few minutes go by, and I realized I'd forgotten something downstairs. And now everybody, is it Bruce, the girls, Greg, our DP? I'm trying to think who else was at the house for chapter 1. Brian, was Brian at the house for chapter 1? I think he was.
He was, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm assuming everybody's gone to bed, right? And so I'm in a t-shirt and my boxers. And I'm like, well, I'll just go downstairs, my boxers. Nobody's down there, you know, and I just got to get this quick thing. So I open the door, and it's quiet, you know, it's this big mansion, moonlight's coming in, you know, and I get to the top of the stairs looking down, and Greg, our DP, is standing there in a jacket looking up at me, just like still like he's a horror movie character. And I'm like, Jesus. And Greg's just like, huh, we scared each other again. It's just scaring of each other, you know? And I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, I thought I heard the doorbell. And I'm like, no, that was me hitting the buzzer to the kitchen. He's like, I thought somebody got locked out. You know what I mean? We're just kind of going back and forth. It was just one of those funny, and I'm standing there in my boxers, you know what I mean? And so it was just funny. I don't know if I've told that before, but if I have, it's not very often.
No,
if I think of something really unique, I'll let you know. But Bruce,
of course, Bruce, any things you can think of?
Yeah. So on chapter 2, I slept on an air mattress in the middle of the living room. That was in chapter 1, I slept on an air mattress in the laundry room. And then
you graduated to the living room.
You're like after that big budget increase.
Got bigger.
That's it. Yeah. Well, the air mattress, I mean, you know.
This is something I'm not sure if I'd even shared with Dave. Maybe I don't know, but there was a couple of nights back to back where I felt as though I was being watched. Like I was alone in the room. Ooh. Everybody had gone to sleep.
I didn't know this.
I was about to turn the lights out, And of course, it's nighttime. We're doing the night shoot. So it's actually like, probably 6 a.m. or something to that effect. But it's dark outside because it's winter, and the days are shorter. So, I felt as though somebody was watching me, and there was just this weird kind of vibe, right? And I kind of shrugged it off, and I'm like, Bruce, whatever. Like, you're just letting shit get to you. You're making a horror movie, and this big man, go to bed. So I went to bed. And the same thing happened the next night. And this time I decided to keep the lights on and sleep with the lights on, thinking that maybe that might help. And the entire day, and I think I forget if we were shooting in the attic that day or something else, but I just had this weird vibe as I was in the space, and nothing to do with anybody.
This is juicy.
My wedding ring has an amethyst stone in it. And, for anybody that, knows anything about amethyst, it's often used as something to kind of ward off, negative energy, or it can be, thought of in that way. And if it cracks, it's a sign that it has warded off some sort of evil energy, or something's been coming at you, and it's cracked or breaks, and it, and it's protecting you, right? It's designed to protect you. So I was, I forget what I was doing. It was something, to the effect of, talking kind of with my hands and sort of gesturing and, giving some direction to something. And I had finished, and I turned around, and I noticed that the stone in my ring was broken, and it had chipped, and a piece had fallen out. And I hadn't done anything. Like, literally, moments before, and like earlier that day. Yeah. Of course, I looked at it, like I'm washing my hands right after going to the bathroom or whatever. And I, of course, I see it. Everything's intact. It's fine. And then all of a sudden, I just noticed after a little bit of time on that day, a piece was missing. And I had no recollection of, how it happened. I hadn't banged it against anything. I hadn't knocked it on anything. Nothing had fallen on it. I didn't put it down somewhere and something fell on it. Like that shit stays with me. It's on my finger like the whole time. So it just made me go, and, and then I just kind of carried on with my day, and things were fine. But I was like,
way cooler than my stories, because I didn't know that. I didn't know.
And
that.
I had to,
You put
and it
Dave's stories to shit. No, that is some scary shit. Like, wow. I'm telling you, I mean, a murder did take place in that. Wow. And so, so did you ever get it repaired? Is it still cracked?
I did get it repaired. Yeah, it cost me like $300 when I got home, and I was like, I got to get this thing fixed. And and funny enough, probably about a week later from being home, it cracked again. And I don't know how it happened. Yeah, I had to take it to the jeweler. Was like, "What are you doing? Like, why? What are you doing with your ring? Like, the fuck?"
Yikes!
And so, I had to get it repaired twice. It was like $600 by the time it was all done. And so now I wear a different ring, because I felt like, maybe it's just too fragile, right? And amethyst is a soft stone, but still, I don't know. It was just coincidental. Happened to happen.
That's interesting.
In a short period of time.
You can work a little bit of that into your script, Dave, in the paranormal one of someone with an amethyst stone.
That's a story I had not heard.
Wow, that's really cool. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Wow. Well, look, we've had such a blast talking to you guys. Again, I just want to reiterate how much we really enjoyed both It's Me, Billy, and Chapter 2. Like, we were just so impressed, which is why Dave, I know we've been chatting back and forth for a long time. This is why it's been so important to us to get the chance to talk with you guys. We're big fans of Black Christmas, and we were so happy to see that you guys extended this. And like we said, into sequels that I truly think Bob Clark himself would really appreciate. Obviously, the original cast appreciated. They all were into it. And yeah, it's just the kind of thing where now you can watch the original Black Christmas and then watch your films and have like a legitimate sequel that feels like it belongs in this universe.
Christmas.
Yes.
Thank you.
And so it was great. And we really feel like, I can't wait to see what you guys do next. I think you guys both have bright futures ahead of you, seriously. And so we can't wait to see your next projects.
Thank you very much.
Cool,
Yeah, really
cool.
appreciate that. You know,
Yeah.
it means a lot. Means a lot.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, thank you
Right.
again. We hope to stay in touch. Again, best of luck with all of the perks for chapter 2. We definitely will be promoting it. And yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Happy holidays.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank
Happy
you.
holidays. Merry Black Christmas, everyone.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you for having us on. Awesome. It's
Of
been
course.
awesome.
Okay, well, take care, guys. We'll talk to you later.
All right.
Okay,
Cheers.
bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Happy Horror Time.
If you'd like to support the podcast, please sign up to be a patron at www.patreon.com/happyhorrortime. As a patron, you get access to all our bonus content, which now includes 2 new bonus episodes every month, a monthly after show mini episode, access to our Discord community so you can chat with us directly, and the chance to review a film with us in one of our bonus episodes.
Patrons also get all our regular episodes ad-free and a day early, our monthly newsletter, the chance to vote in polls, and autographed Happy Horror Time stickers.
I'm Matt Emmert.
And I'm Tim Murdoch.
And we hope you have a happy horror time.